I tell people this all the time. Africa has been exploited for a very, very long time. And Libya is a clear example of what I mean. So before 2011, Libya followed a highly unconventional political and economic growth under Gaddafi. So I'm going to divide what I'm talking about into six different parts. One is the political system, which is called the Jamahiriya. Okay, so under Jamahiriya, Libya was officially named the Great Socialist People's Libyan Arab Jamahiriya, meaning state of the masses. So it's for the people, literally. Two, no president or parliament in the conventional sense. So they don't have like any president, they just have a leader, president or parliament in a conventional sense. Governance was theoretically carried out through the People's Congress and the People's Committees inspired by Gaddafi's Green Book ideology. In practice, the real power was centralized around Gaddafi, loyal elites, particularly the security apparatus. So, two, economic structure. So, here is why I want you to pay attention. The wealth that is coming from oil was nationalized and formed the backbone of the economy. So, what does that mean? It means that the wealth was shared to everyone. So, it wasn't just one person taking the whole wealth. The state maintained heavy control over key industries. So, many basic needs were subsidized or provided for free. Private enterprise existed but was limited and tightly regulated. Number three, we'll talk about the social welfare provisions. So before 2011, Libya had one of the highest living standards in Africa. Living standards. So what it means is they provided free education, free healthcare, housing support. The housing support is the state, which is the country, will help the citizens to acquire homes. Rent was often very minimal. Gas, electricity, and food was all subsidized. So I remember then someone was saying fuel was actually cheaper in Libya compared to water. So I believe it because it was literally like everywhere. And the financial grants for newly married couples. So Libya carried no external debts for long periods. So all of these IMF debts and all of these debts and all, there was none. There was absolutely none. And they acted as a creditor nation. So what it means is they were giving other parts of Africa money rather than borrowing. So they had in excess. They had in excess to actually give out. So number four, infrastructure and development. So the Great Man-Made River Project. They had a river project that they made that was supplying water to cities, agricultural infrastructures. They were just supplying water from the ground, but they had to make it. It was like a massive project. It was actually considered the eight wonders of the world. So that's how big it was then. So another heavy investment they did was they invested heavily in roads, talked about hostels, schools, public utilities as well, and there was high literacy rate compared to other regions around Libya. So all other countries around Libya were more educated than those people. So number five, security and stability. So there was strong and pervasive internal security apparatus, very low level of street crimes. Of course, when you have money, when you're being taken care of, when you're being looked after, the street crime is going to be very low naturally. So borders and armed group were tightly controlled as well. So number six, and I think this one was actually what made them to go after him. He had a Pan-African mindset, like a proper Pan-African mindset and international initiative. So what it means is, so he advocated strongly for the whole of Africa, so for Africa unity, and he wanted like a single currency in the whole Africa. So financial support, financially supported. So the African Union, African Development Banks, and the rest of them. So he was pushing for a single currency, and he was pushing for a single African passport. So, and imagine what that would have done. And he was also trying to back that currency with the natural resources on the ground, like gold. So imagine countries like Congo that have a lot of cobalt and a lot of other natural minerals. They would have been very, very rich. Imagine countries like Nigeria, Libya, they would have been stupidly rich just because they have a lot of oil. So the currency was planned to be backed by the minerals on the ground instead of being backed by dollar compared to dollars. Dollars is just a piece of paper. So, but instead of being backed, then this is actually what he wanted to do. But the Western world didn't like it. They did not like it because if that happens, there's a lot of things that they are going to lose. So they're going to lose that control over Africa. Africa is going to be one of the leading powers. Africa is going to be very strong. Point that Western countries won't be able to control it or won't be able to steal from it anymore. It's going to be very very strong. So they really didn't like that, and it was completely against their all they've planned, and of course they'll have to take him out. So there was no political opposition. That was one of the things with the Libyan government then as well. So, but I want to say after his death in 2011, it was complete chaos. Like there was collapse of the central government. So everything was shattered. Power shifted to militants and armed groups. So of course, the little groups that have arms, that control some certain areas, they became wild. They started, power shifted to them because of course there was no central control anymore. So countries split between, rival governments. So typically East and West, it split. And there was repeated civil wars and ongoing instability. So heavy foreign interventions and proxy conflicts. So what it means is there was conflict from the outside, the conflict that is being sponsored from the outside. It's because if there is chaos, they benefit more because they make deals like we're going to give you arms to give us some oils, things like that. I'm not saying that's what happened, but similar deals like that, dirty deals like that, that's what happens if there is chaos and if there is war. And another thing is oil production was disrupted, sadly. And there was severe economic decline, there was inflation, there was cash shortages. So the security was getting really worse. Crime and human trafficking, became really rampant. And the infrastructures collapsed. So this is one of the ways that Africa as a country, as a continent, excuse me, this is one of the ways they've been, controlled over time. In my next clip, I'm going to talk about DR Congo, how it's still been exploited, right from when Belgium was ruling it till date, how DR Congo, should have been one of the richest countries in the world, really, and also how Nigeria has been in the political spectrum of, using oil as a major source of income, and that fuels corruption, really. And also, I'm going to talk about loot and loss of other countries in Africa and how the Western powers have really exploited, these countries to their own benefit. If there is chaos, of course, the Western world is going to benefit. So chaos should be there. They try to fuel the chaos. They try to make these things look bad. Libya illustrates how an external manipulations combined with internal authoritarianism can, dismantle like a proper functioning state, leaving chaos in place and making the Western world better.